My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
By the way, speaking of birthdays, I have it on good authority that our next guest over the weekend actually turned 94. How impressive is that? The guy is flirting with triple digits. How did he get there? Let's find out. I am very pleased to be joined by Larry Rutman. He's an award-winning podcaster and author whose latest book is Intimate Conversations Face-to-Face with Matchless Musicians. Good morning, Larry. Thanks for joining me on the radio.
How are you, Frank? I'm glad to be here.
Well, I mean, I'd be glad to be anywhere at 94, quite honestly. I know you probably get this question every day, but give us some pro tips. How'd you make it to 94? What's the secret?
Well, first of all, let me say hello to all my friends out there in New York listening to your great show, Frank.
Thank you.
I mean, I started out my law career at Columbia Law School. Marty Appel was who was well known in New York, was my agent for the book I wrote on baseball, and so I have got a lot of friends in New York, and it's a great town, great place.
That it is.
As the answer to your question, I think, I get asked that all the time. I tell you something, when I was 65 practicing law, already 35 years, I looked around and I saw the guys that were practicing along with me, my age, I was aging more slowly, and that has continued to the present time. I think it's a combination of optimism, genes, spirit, interest, staying alive, staying active, doing something, have a goal. And I guess my goal now, as you just said, is probably 100, because when you get to 94, you think about two things: death and getting to 100. You don't have a long time, but you hope for a good while.
So I want to talk about your latest book in just a moment, but as you alluded to just now, you've had a remarkable career as an attorney, a historian, an author. What drives you to keep exploring new subjects and writing about new things at this stage in your life?
I do that all the time, Frank. I'm always looking at Wikipedia, and I'm always looking at my iPhone or my pad or something like that to find out new things. I don't know what it is. Well, I'm coming out with hopefully next year with a memoir, and the three words in it are friendship and inquisitiveness and maturation. And I think I've lived my life backwards a little bit. I think I grew up more as I got older.
You started your writing career at 67 years old. What was it about that moment in your life that made you say, now's the time to start writing?
Well, people always used to say that my legal briefs were dangerous because people could understand them and they weren't written in legalese. And then when I would write cards to people who had lost somebody in the family, they would call me up and say, that made me cry. And I never thought I'd become a writer. I thought that was for other people. But then I started to do a local television program, and people said, you got to write a book about your hometown, Brookline, Mass., right outside of Boston, surrounded on three sides by Boston. So I did, and I liked it, and I sort of melded, changed over from law, even though it continued into my writing career to some extent. And here I am.
At 30 minutes after the hour, this is The Other Side of Midnight. My guest is Larry Rutman. He's the author of the book Intimate Conversations, Face-to-Face with Matchless Musicians. We're going to get into this book in just a moment, but your book, American Jews and America's Game, explores the intersection of baseball and Jewish identity. I'm not Jewish, but my wife is part Jewish, and I have so many friends that are Jewish. I feel like I'm almost an honorary Jew, in part because of my fondness for gefilte fish. I am a huge baseball fan. What do you think it is about baseball that resonates so deeply with the Jewish experience in America?
Well, I think baseball is really a fantastic game. I mean, it's a thinking man's game. You got to think ahead,
Sure.
And the smart managers, they're thinking about, 3 innings down the line, what's going to be, and it's like maybe like a chess game, although I'm not a chess player, but I think that it is a thinking man's game, and not only that, you sit outside. It doesn't take all your attention every minute. There are great players. The players in baseball maybe become more famous than anybody else, at least up to the time football took over. But I think that there's something intellectual about it. I loved to play it as a kid. I'm sure you did too.
Sure.
So I'm drawn to baseball. And also, remember, I grew up when Ted Williams, Bobby Doerr, Don DiMaggio, and Johnny Pesky, and guys like that were on the Red Sox. And, I go back a long way. I saw my first game. My father said, "See that big number 4?" I said, "Yeah." I was like 5 years old. I mean, he had to take me up. There were no bullpens. He had to take me up to the goal.
Babe Ruth?
In the bleak? No. Lou Gehrig.
Oh, Lou Gehrig, of course. Babe Ruth was number 3, of course, yeah. Did you ever come across stories of Jewish baseball players facing anti-Semitism on or off the field? And if so, how did they handle that?
Well, I think early in the century there were some Jewish ball players. Some called themselves by their own name, but others adopted names like Kelly and even Italian names or whatever, so that there was a little, they encountered anti-Semitism, sure. I mean, even Hank Greenberg was a great star with Detroit and almost broke Bruce's record with 58 home runs, got into anti-Semitic squabbles. So anti-Semitism is, it's gone on for a couple of thousand years, so that you can't escape it. It's now, getting a little out of hand, and even in this country. So I think that they handle it in various ways. But, Hank Greenberg had to defend himself with his fists several times, so it came to that.
As you alluded to, you are a Red Sox fan. We actually have quite a few Red Sox fans listening. Our resident celebrity Red Sox fan, film critic Jeffrey Lyons, is listening now. I'm sure he's cheering every syllable. Who's your favorite Red Sox player of all time, and what made them stand out to you?
Well, I guess Ted Williams, because I'll tell you something. Ted Williams is really he's the American dream in many ways. I mean, he was a tough guy. Everybody knew he had a bad temper and so forth. But look, the guy was a master fisherman. He was a master pilot. John Glenn said he was the best wingman he ever had. He landed a flaming aircraft and lived through it. Came back to hit 13 home runs in a month. In September when he came back. He was also a handsome guy. He was a great hitter. He and Ruth spread eagle the field when it comes to on-base percentage and slugging percentage and things like that. So, he really was, I think he and Ruth are the greatest players ever.
If you're just tuning in, this is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. We're talking with Larry Rutman. His new book is Intimate Conversations Face-to-Face with Matchless Musicians. One more baseball question, if I can. Baseball's changed significantly over the years. You've got pitch clocks. You've got analytics. You've got all these rule changes. You think the game is better or worse today than it was 30, 40, 50 years ago?
Worse. Definitely worse. I mean, when I went out to Braves Field to watch the Braves, they played right down the street in Braves Field, now BU, and the Fenway Park is only a mile away. I would go all the time, watch games, sit out in the sun. That was even before lights. It was just simpler, easier. All these rules changes the game now it's really totally about money. Previously, it wasn't all about money, and there was it just was a better more pure game at that time. I mean, I think back to, I had no association or didn't see guys like Ty Cobb and Tris Speaker play, or Babe Ruth even, but I'm attracted to the older time, just as I'm attracted because of my age to the 20th century, which I think was a simpler time. I think we have a lot of things. I could not be a writer without the internet, but on the other hand, I think life was easier and more relaxed in the 20th century than it is now.
Yeah,
Here at the Almond Joy Factory, where tropical vibes abound, we use soft, fresh-tasting coconut.
The crunchiest almonds and delicious chocolate candy.
Ah, but do you know what our most important ingredient is? Sometimes you feel like a nut.
Sometimes you don't.
Almond Joy's got nuts and something even way better than that. Yes, Almond Joy is made with almonds and joy.
How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team, so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry, so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way, so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next, so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/us/leading edge.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself, to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
This episode is brought to you by Chevrolet. When you have 4 new tires, every drive feels fresh. Right now, buy 3 select tires and get 1 for just $1 during the Chevrolet Certified Service Fresh Start Tire event. Visit Chevrolet.com/service offers or see dealer for full details. At participating U.S. GM dealers only, highest or equal value tire will be $1. Offer ends 5/31/2025. Not available with other offers.
No, I bet. Now, you've also, which I really admire, been deeply involved in your hometown, in Brookline, from politics to local historical preservation. What is it about Brookline that makes it so special to you?
Well, Brookline, it's a town in itself. There's not a shopping center of the town, surrounded on 3 sides by Boston. It maintained its independence when Boston was taking up all the rest of the suburbs to become Greater Boston and even part of Boston. So that, but Brookline at that time in the 19th century, when they were asked to join into Boston, really was a Yankee stronghold, and there weren't a lot of Italians or Jews or blacks or Indians or anything like that at that particular time. But they chose to remain independent and be a town, to have a town meeting, to keep its, I wouldn't call it bucolic, but it certainly at that time in the 19th century was more farmland and maybe even resort or a place for people with wealth to live. I mean, it was between here and Boston was the flatland known as Back Bay before it was filled in. So I think that it's the idea of hanging on to the old style of the township, which was celebrated by foreign people when they came to write about the United States.
I'm wondering if you could sit down with your younger self, whatever age, maybe right around the time you started writing in your mid to late 60s, if you could sit down with your younger self and give him advice, what would you say?
Well, I guess I would say that you should try your best to stay in reasonable physical shape. I'm not a nut about that, but I try and stay, reasonably healthy. But my interests are mostly in the realm of the imagination, and so that I would say to them, be interested in other people, especially. I mean, the most important thing are other people. All people. I like all people. My wife keeps saying, "Why do you talk to people on the street?" Well, I say I talk to them because I like them. Well, how about the young women? I'd like to talk to them too. Yeah, sure.
I bet. All right, let's talk about your new book, Intimate Conversations, Face-to-Face with Matchless Musicians. Really interesting. I haven't read it, but I'm looking forward to checking it out. What inspired you to write this book and focus on conversations with musicians?
Frank, you asked some very interesting questions. I like the way you asked those questions.
Thank you.
Actually, when I was about 30, I really didn't listen to much classical music. My favorites, and they still are, were Doris Day, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin. There were a lot of crooners at that time, and I liked them all. Frank Sinatra is a big favorite then, big favorite now. Loved Doris Day. But I really, I listen to classical music every once in a while, but not much. And then about 30, I got married at 32, I suddenly bought one of those, 10 greatest symphonies or something like that, just as a lark. They used to sell those. So, and I listened to, put on Mozart first, put on a Mozart piano concerto. I remember it was the 21st piano concerto, the one they called the Elvira Madigan second movement. And I said to myself, my God, that's beautiful. And he wrote 27 of these? And I started listening, and then expanded from there. And from there, I listened to a lot of music, started going to Symphony Hall. Symphony Hall, the Boston Symphony published these great programs, and I became sort of an amateur musicologist over the years, never thinking I'd write a book. If I said to myself during most of that period, you're going to write a book about classical music, I would have said, you're nuts. I couldn't write a book about classical music. Who am I? What do I know? But you know something, Frank? This book, you could ask me this question, but I'm going to give you the answer before you ask me. It's written in my own vernacular. I never took a lesson about how to write because I figured they'd ruin my natural style. I seem to have a natural style that people say, I know you're writing any place. It's by turns, it's funny, it's this, it's that, it's informative, but it's me. And so I said, so if you read this book, it's easy to read because it's not like a musician talking to a musician. It's like an ordinary person talking to a musician, and I'm not talking about diminuendos and fortissimos. I couldn't tell you the difference between the two right now. But it's me talking to them as a human being. And written in that style, people say to me, it's like looking over my shoulder and listening to this conversation. And that's what I want it to be, because my purpose in writing it was to bring people to classical music. Now, I love Bruce Springsteen. I love a lot of pop music. But you have to have a little bit more of an attention span to listen to classical music. But the rewards are fantastic because if you listen, and people are afraid of it. That's another reason for writing the book, to bring people into the concert hall and to get people not to be afraid of it. A lot of people say, well, it's classical music, I can't listen to that. But you can. Anybody can. It's gorgeous. I just upstairs just a few minutes before I'm talking to you, I listened to Elgar's. He was an Englishman. He was a Catholic Englishman. Didn't fit in all that well in England, but he was one of the great composers of all time. And I was listening to his cello concerto played by this gorgeous young woman lives in Europe, and it's so great. It makes you feel so good. It's so beautiful, and that's what I want people to do. And I don't think it's easier for a regular person to do that convincingly than it is for a musician to do it.
You've interviewed 21 world-renowned musicians. How did you choose who to include?
First of all, Boston, like New York, and a few other places in the country, there's 4 or 5 good music schools here, including the New England Conservatory and several others. And so a lot of great musicians live here. If you go to Cambridge, there's 4 or 5 or 6 fantastic musicians, so it was easy to get them. And then the Boston Symphony draws people from all over the world, like Anne-Sophie Mutter, the great violinist, the German violinist, who, so when she came, I got in touch with her, and I met her up at Tanglewood, and she invited me to an alfresco lunch at Lantar, which is where the stars go to avoid the crowds. And I never met her before. She comes out a little bit sweated up from a rehearsal at Tanglewood, and says the first thing she said is, "Hi, Larry." So we had a nice lunch, and she told me all about herself, and we talked about various things from the Holocaust to her dogs. So that, and if you ask me how I got them, I guess it's chutzpah, because I'm one of those people who'll talk to anybody anytime and have fun doing it, because as I said to you before, I think people are interesting. All people, Frank, you know this better than anybody, that everybody has a story. I was listening to your programs this afternoon, and you talk to people very freely, very easily, and very naturally, and so you know what I'm talking about.
Well, thank you. You're kind to say that. I'm wondering, because it's not just classical musicians that you spoke to, but even some jazz and pop musicians. What common themes emerged in your conversations with these folks?
They all love music. I would say that great musicians, or even all musicians who are trained well, music is music. I mean, I don't draw the line between classical and pop music. I think classical music is threatened now by pop, because pop, the beat and so forth of a lot of pop music is very attractive to many people. You can talk about Billy Joel and people like that, or you can talk about the music down in Nashville, which is, I love country music, but music is music, and so that I just think it's a common type of thing. I would say, Frank, take a look at the Metropolitan Opera. The stars over there. I have a nice friendship going with Renee Fleming. She's wonderful, and she's done some pop stuff, and also with Susan Graham, who's the mezzo-soprano. She was over there at the Metropolitan. And if you look in the book, the frontispiece of the book has a picture of Mozart, and above it is a saying that Susan Graham, a question I ask most of these people, what is music? Simple question. She answered off the top of her head, very, very smart woman from West Texas. She's brilliant. And she answered, without missing a beat, a statement that, I'm trying to get it into familiar quotations, Bartlett's familiar quotations. She said what music was. I guess I sent you a PDF of the book. Take a look at the frontispiece and what she said about music spontaneously. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I will do that. I am anticipating reading this whole thing, but I haven't had an opportunity to yet. You've described this as a layman probing into the psyche of musicians. What surprised you most about how musicians think?
That's another interesting question, Frank. I would say that I think that they are fairly liberal in their thinking, and they think about music a lot, of course, but they also are interested in the world about them and what goes on. After all, in order to become a musician, you've got to go to school, and the chances are you're going to get an education in things other than music, and so they're stimulated by the world about them. And every person is different, of course. But most of them seem to, and I think that they have fights among themselves occasionally, because all people do. But generally speaking, it seems to me that, and maybe I'm looking at the clouds or something, but I find them to be good-natured, friendly, cooperative. And a lot of music is done cooperatively or together, and I think that it's that togetherness, that collaboration, that makes them better at getting along with other people, because the most beautiful music, other than the ones that are done solo, are the result of collaboration, like a symphony orchestra, or even a group of 4 or 6 or something like that in a smaller chamber piece. They have to get along with one another, and they do.
Right. No, that's great. Hey, before we get out of here, and I hope you'll come back, Larry, what's your next book? Do you have plans for another book, or is there another area of music you'd like to explore? Something else entirely, maybe? What do you think?
Well, when I had COVID, I didn't have COVID. Luckily, I've never escaped that. But during the COVID period, I started to. People said you should write a memoir. I said, "Why me? What have I done? What's so great? Oh, you've led an interesting life." Well, I don't know. But then when COVID came, I had time, so I started a memoir.
Well, I lost you there. Larry, our time was wrapping up anyway, but apparently the timer you had us on is ringing. All right. Well, I enjoyed the conversation very much, Larry, if you can hear me. If not, then I still enjoyed it. Larry Rutman, award-winning podcaster and author. His latest book is Intimate Conversations Face-to-Face with Matchless Musicians. If you want to comment on any portion of our discussion, feel free to give me a call, 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. This is The Other Side of Midnight. Straight ahead.